Well, hello everyone, and welcome to this very special episode of One Stiletto in the Grave in front of a live audience at the Academic Archers Conference 2024. Now, yay! Now, for those of you that don't know, I am Sunny Ormond, otherwise known as Ambridge's Lillian Bellamy. Hello, darlings.
And I'm Jane James, and thank you very much, Cara and Nicola, for inviting us back. We are going to be chatting to some very special guests about what's been happening to them in the last year, and then we'll take some questions from you towards the end.
And they are very special guests indeed.
All right. Does anyone want the hair doing? we've never been to London before, so this is really very exciting.
Look at them all! Please, everyone, welcome Tracy and Chelsea, Susie Riddell and Madeleine Leslay.
For those of you who've not come across their alter egos, Susie and her friend Esther Stanford have a brilliant podcast called Limited Time Only. I don't know how you do it, because it's for people who feel there aren't enough hours in their day. And how you fit it in, I can't imagine.
Yeah, it's a bit of a mystery, but it's wonderful, and we really do recommend it. And Maddie has recently been in the West End with a 6-month stint in The Mousetrap. Yeah, and brilliant she was. Also on stage at the New Vic in Stoke, in A Leap in the Dark. I saw both of those productions and she was absolutely wonderful. So welcome to you both.
Yeah,
Thank you. Very kind, thank you.
We obviously do want to chat to you about the year in Horrobin, but first, we have to ask you just sound so much like members of the same family, don't they?
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Well, it's really, that's Maddie's kind of skill, I think. because obviously I was already there. And then when I remember Maddie coming in to audition, there were 6, I think, actresses came in. And it was nice because I was there as well. And you know, I kind of remember, you know, how it's horrible auditioning. It's really frightening. And so I was putting everybody at their ease. And I remember Maddie's audition very clearly because she'd kind of already got, you know, I'd obviously clearly listened to Tracy and had nailed the accent, nailed the accent, and was just immediately brilliant. And I think, has just, created this wonderful character. Yeah. And as soon as we were together, it just felt completely right. I'm very proud of her.
So I just desperately wanted it. I just really wanted to play the part, and the audition was sort of could have been my only chance to do it. So you were in my ears constantly for the 2 weeks leading up to it, just tried to just take it all in, really.
Yeah. And I mean, they genuinely do feel like mum and daughter, don't they? And yet you're distinct within it vocally, but you are just so mum and daughter. So it must have been interesting, Susie, for you initially, because Brad and Chelsea were talked of before they were voiced.
I mean, I just used to shout at them.
Yes.
I don't blame you.
I never said their names without it being like, Brad, Chelsea! That was just, yeah. So it was and I wondered when they would make an appearance. Because it was, because I've been in it, I think it's 12 years, 13, coming up to 13 years. And when it was 2 years ago? 3 years ago?
I think it's nearly 4 now.
Wow. Yeah. Pandemic, does it?
I know.
So, and I was thinking, well, they're getting to an age where they might appear. So, it was very exciting when I was told. And then with Brad coming in as well. And I do you remember that first scene with me, you and Brad? And
in the kitchen,
and it was just great. It just immediately felt, this is totally. It felt like we'd been doing it for years. Yeah. That we had been doing it together.
I remember. Were you and Brad cast at the same time, or were one of you first?
I think a year after.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I think.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And did you audition the Brads as well?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Okay.
And in fact, Angus, who plays George. They got in a... in fact, this is... I know. Boo. In fact, this happened with the girls as well. So Maddie actually auditioned for Beth, Casey, and Chelsea at the same time, and Rebecca, who plays Beth, auditioned for Chelsea and Beth. So it was quite nice because it was six actresses, and they had a decent chance, kind of more of a chance. There were two parts up for grabs, and the same with the roles of Brad and Georgia were cast at the same time. So Taylor, who plays Brad, auditioned for both roles, and Angus as well. And I think, either of them could have played either of those parts, but I think they've really they got it right. Yeah. They got it right.
And that's so interesting, because I think one of the stories that we wanted to talk about, even though actually it was more than a year ago, is Chelsea's pregnancy. And the reason that we think that's current is just the fallout from that has been huge. I mean, Lily and Russ split up, and then Beth, who's who you auditioned for that part, and that's had a massive impact on her character, hasn't it? She and Ben split up. There's been all the stuff about Ben's mental health, and then of course the charging station. I think is down to Chelsea being pregnant, because Vince.
Yes.
It is, if you think about it, because Vince pulled out of the deal with David and Ruth, didn't he?
Yes.
And so they had to sell that land at Hollytree. So the charging station came in.
Yes.
So there's been a lot of fallout from that little incident.
Yeah.
Little incident, yes.
Yeah.
So did you know at the beginning, when you saw the story, did you know whether Chelsea was going to have an abortion or whether she's going to have the baby?
No, didn't know at all, which was really nice to play, actually, because I genuinely could only play with what I had in the script in front of me. The indecision, I didn't know which way she would go, so yeah, until the script came in when she made the decision. Using cards. Yes. I think it was, wasn't it? I honestly didn't know which way.
And it was
she
quite
would
late
go.
on in the pregnancy.
It was right on the cusp where she could have the abortion, which, was so interesting to do.
Yeah, and because what a decision. We would just we were constantly talking about it. But she didn't. It felt completely real that she would be, 1 minute thinking, wanted to keep it, in the next minute. Yeah, really, and it was fantastic to play. It was great, because getting a storyline like that, that you can really invest in emotionally, and that really develops your characters as well.
Exactly, because I think up until then, I just sort of done very upbeat, cheeky, sparky scenes, and then this came along where it was a completely different side of her, which, I got to know a very different Chelsea that lies in her somewhere, so invaluable.
Do you think that changed her, matured her, or whatever?
Yeah. I've definitely noticed in the scripts that I've had her being different, a much more mature, solid, grounded version of herself, I feel. I mean, I don't know what you guys feel. But I have noticed a difference. And it's interesting that in another world, she did have the baby, and that would be a different version of her again. And Tracy as well.
Yeah. And that developed, presumably, your relationship as mum and daughter.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. It was... Yeah. It is a strange thing being in the Archers, really, because, you kind of... It is like a parallel... It is a parallel universe that I always think it exists. It exists now. It's going on now, isn't it? Yeah. So, I imagine Tracy is going about her day. She's probably at the Bull working today. And then you kind of step into those characters when you get into the studio. So to have a storyline where you can become emotionally invested and develop that relationship, it's so lovely, because it informs everything that comes up after that. And it makes... I never find it difficult to step into to Tracy. You kind of it's just she's there, and but all those conversations we had and the heartache, and it just enriches it. So it makes it even easier to be those characters, I think.
You've
And
got
it's
the
such
emotional history, haven't you?
Yeah.
Which is just sort of inherent in the scripts that you know how you inform whatever situation you're in.
Yes.
It's there.
How
The
do you react?
background is.
How does Tracy react to the
Yeah.
news that her daughter is pregnant? Yeah.
And Tracy was so supportive, I think,
yeah.
in a way that if that had been Susan, she wouldn't have been.
Yes.
I think, you know, although they're sisters, it's very different. But I really loved the way that Tracy was so supportive. But
Yeah.
it was a huge emotional toll on Tracy as well, wasn't it?
Oh gosh, I mean, the idea that your daughter disappears for a week,
Yeah.
a pregnant daughter, it was terrifying. Yeah, it was really, and I have a daughter who's younger, but it does, you can't help but sort of put yourself in that position and think about her. So yeah, it was.
But the whole development, I think, of the Horrobin family, I mean, I just love you all as a family. You've all blended so beautifully. And when you and Jazza got together, it's it's just...
I love they got together.
You know, and Chelsea, who can be quite sort of brittle and tricky, she has a really lovely relationship, doesn't she, with Jazza?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, really, they can sort of make fun of each other, but also in a very loving way. And I think that she hasn't had a very stable male figure in her life, or one that hasn't had an agenda of sorts, I guess. So I think he's so essential to her, knowing that there are good men out there who will support, because I think she's just seen her mum in so many. I think there was a scene where it was like, you've got with this person and he did that, and you did this person, he did that, and to now be settled is,
Yeah, and then
really nice.
You know, Den kind of came back into the picture. And the fact that both of that Brad and Chelsea were sort of mature enough to be able to say, do you know what? I think we're okay. And I think Jazza was integral to that decision. If he hadn't been in the picture, then maybe they would have hung around with Den a bit more.
Do you think Tracy and Jazza would have got married? Do you think what happened with Chelsea, in a way, moved Tracy and Jazza closer together? I think it moved Chelsea and Jazza closer together.
They definitely. He was incredibly supportive during that time as well, and I think it really strengthened their relationship, which was already pretty strong. I don't know about the marriage. Maybe that stability. The stability of a family and a family unit that would, for her children, I think, it would have informed that a little bit.
And your relationship with Brad, you see, I love, they're complete polar opposites, aren't they? Brad and Chelsea. But you can tell they love each other with all the scraps and everything, and particularly, I think Chelsea with him, I mean, she'd fight for him to the end, wouldn't she?
Oh, yes, she would. I do believe she would kill for him. She would go
Which is
in.
the interesting relationship you've got with Mia, of course. Chelsea, polar opposites again, aren't they?
Yes. Yeah, that was interesting when Brad and Mia started getting close and got together. But I think she's put her feelings aside for him and is ready to sort of get on with her, I think. Yeah, she's very protective, even though they argue so much.
Yes.
They make fun of each other. I think she would literally kill for him, I think. Yeah.
It's really lovely. It's very tender, I think.
Yeah. I think Taylor is fantastic.
Oh, he's brilliant.
He's phenomenal.
He's absolutely
He's so
brilliant.
sweet. I mean, it makes my heart break when I hear him.
Yes. No, he is.
And I'm like, I just want to give him a hug because
Yes.
things go wrong, and he's so sweet and so funny. I mean, actually,
So
I think
funny.
both Maddie and Taylor, their comedy bones are very strong. They're so funny. Yeah, it's wonderful.
No, completely effortlessly. And I mean, just recently, the lovely scenes, with Brad and Lily, and he thinks that Lily fancies him, doesn't he?
Oh, yeah.
It was so sweet, all that. I mean, they played it brilliantly. Very funny.
Yeah.
Very, very funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting, isn't it, that Chelsea's got so much self-confidence and Brad has historically had very little self-confidence.
Yeah. I also wonder with Chelsea is I do think that she is vulnerable deep down, and I do think it is a shell. I think that's one thing that's changed since the pregnancy. I do think her confidence is genuine now, whilst I feel that before it was very much a veneer. I don't know, I might be wrong, but that's the impression I get, that is something that she's gained more solidly since she's gone through what she's gone through.
And do you think that she might have moments, you might not be able to answer this, but moments of regret as a character that she did have the abortion, or is that, are we plumbing depths here?
Such a good question. I mean, I don't know, but I actually, for the evidence I've got, I think she's happy with her. I think maybe she wonders what it could be like, but I think that she is 100%.
Yeah.
She's done the right thing by her.
Because she had that conversation with Natasha, didn't she? Which was one of the things that swung her to having the abortion. Am I right? Because she'd had one, hadn't she?
Yeah.
And I remember there was a scene between you guys.
I do remember, I think because I was doing her hair.
That's right.
Yes,
and I think that
And
was
her makeup.
a moment, and that you thought, and she was sharing with you that actually it was the right thing that she'd done. And I think that was a moment when, listen to me.
Listen to me, I'm so grateful you reminded me. No, that's true. She said there were a couple of other people that that was one thing that was really great, because she went and spoke to other people around and got their perspective, and she had interactions with Pip as well, who did have her child, so she got that perspective and
What a nightmare children are.
and there was and there was Elizabeth as well that had a history of this. You've just opened a door of wonder that of course.
I think it'll be interesting, I think in years to come.
Yeah.
I mean, she won't have, she
Yes.
will.
Yeah.
I mean, she's going to go over it again. It'll be interesting to see what happens.
How that resonates throughout different points.
And I'm sure, I mean, maybe they do talk about it, but we haven't been party to that ourselves. I'm sure they do.
You know, she did. You're right. She did talk to all sorts of people, didn't she?
Yeah.
And she got help. I mean, she got help from Blake, obviously.
I love that.
Do we like Blake? Do we like
We
Blake?
love Blake.
I was hoping something might develop.
I
So
know.
did I thought it might.
Because
Maybe it will. Maybe it will. I mean,
Yeah.
just don't- just don't know.
Yeah, it was lovely. It was so tender, wasn't it?
It was.
And we saw the
Such
lovely
a
warm
sweetie.
side of.
But it's so funny because when you're recording these scenes, you don't know whether there's going to be a future or not. So you have to just play them as is on the page. You can't, I go, that's a bit flirty or not, or what, like you don't know what the result is. So you literally just play the moments that are in front of you on the paper.
Yeah.
And one of my favourite relationships as well, Susie, was your relationship with Oliver, which is still, it was such an unusual coming together of characters who were just polar opposites, a bit like Alistair and Jim, but it's so touching, all that.
I remember, there were a lot of, I do look at Twitter, or X or whatever, and there was a lot of kind of, is Oliver and Tracy going to get together? And I was like, are they going to get together? I was like, please. That would be great.
Still time.
I was gutted that it. And I have to say that when Grey Gables closed, I was genuinely, as Susie, absolutely gutted. Yes. I was so gutted to lose that job, and I still am. It's not even real. But I was so upset, and partly because I wouldn't be with Oliver anymore, and. And it is a lovely relationship, and it's just natural and it works, doesn't it? And they've helped each other. And I suppose he is like a father figure to her, really, because her dad.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. She doesn't really ever have anything particularly nice to say about him. But Oliver is just such a... Michael, who plays him, is just the most lovely man and so good. But Oliver is he sees people, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And he's a people person. He really has connections with people and wants, and you see that with the Grundys as well, but wants to help and wants to make life easier for people. And I think there was just kindred spirits.
I remember one of the episodes I used to play on repeat to learn your voice was the one where Oliver at Christmas, you go for a meal with him.
Yeah.
And it's just the most beautiful episode.
Yes, it's sweet.
Together where he's, just sharing a moment. Because I think you were like, you'd just broken up with Roman.
Roman. Do you remember Roman? Yeah. Gosh.
And he's cheering you up because you're like, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be able to come here otherwise. Oh, it's just the most beautiful.
Yeah, and she
scene.
helped him through. I mean, he was really having difficulty coming to terms with Caroline's death at that point, wasn't he, as well? So, yeah, Roman. I mean, that was an instant of. We had no idea where that was going, and then he opened the script. Oh, you're moving to Mauritius.
Really?
He was a bit disappointed about that.
But did you know, in the early days with Ryan, who plays Jazza so brilliantly, did you get a feeling when you guys started to have scenes together that it may develop into
I
something
tell you
else?
what happened. As soon as they had a row, I was like, they're going to get together. I remember going, I mean, it was intense. It was when he'd sold Brad some of his homebrew. You remember Brad had vomited all over the sofa. And Tracy was incandescent with rage and kind of went round and they had this fuming, and it was just, they were these two kind of, very spirited people coming up against each other, and it was like, I was like, are they going to get together? I think I kept saying it to various producers, they were like, can't possibly say anything. I was like, I did know.
You could sort of get a feel.
And so they just kind of, they're fiery, aren't they, the two of them?
Yeah.
What do you think Tracy gets out of the relationship with Jazza?
Sex. Oh, no, I didn't say that.
I don't want to know.
Yeah. Double-crust pizza. I think she gets someone who gets her and is also able to stand up to her. And also, they've a very similar sense of humour. And he's kind.
Yeah.
I think she gets kindness from him. And they are fiery, but they're both able to say sorry as well. And I think it works.
Yeah. And they can argue without it completely derail it. Like they have this underlying, I can't think of the word. I don't know. But no matter how much they fight, they know they're solid anyway.
Yeah, and they're there for each other.
Because there was that little moment, wasn't there, where you got cross with him over Hannah, because he'd said, I quite fancied Hannah, and that was, I'm never going to marry you, or whatever it was, But they always come back together again.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Vesuvius, and then it's all right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They make it up, don't they?
Now, what about, I'm interested in your relationship as characters with George, who has caused a bit of a problem, hasn't he, all in the village generally, but I mean within your family, with Brad.
Yeah.
He's led him astray, or not led him astray, he's put him in situations where he's deemed to be the one responsible. In fact, it's George that has set him up.
It's tricky, isn't it? Because he's, it's quite complicated, isn't it? So he's my niece's son. Says I'm his great aunt.
Crikey.
Yeah.
Great aunt Tracy.
And I'm his second cousin. Because if Emma's my cousin, then George is my second cousin.
No, first cousin once removed.
First cousin once removed.
Glad you're here.
Yeah, so you can't really, and obviously, there was that when they got into trouble and they put the whole police thing, and Brad told the truth, and George lied. Was it the other way around? Oh no, yes, George told the truth, and he told, yes.
Oh, and Brad lied because he
told him to lie.
Yeah.
I mean, it's tricky because you can feel disapproval, but ultimately, it's family.
I know.
It's
fine.
And Susan and Emma won't sort of. I found it very. I actually I have to say the whole stuff with when George was working at the
piggery,
whatever. And all the stuff with Hannah, and then Helen and the Instagram stuff. I thought that was just tremendous, and I remember, and I think that there were so many characters impacted by that, and it was really. Yeah, it's complicated, isn't it? It's really complicated because everyone's so enmeshed. And Neil, I found Neil's reaction to George remarkable, and I was like, because Neil is just so honest, isn't he? He's just can't stand it. He's not going to put up with dishonesty from anybody, not even his own grandson. And there was I thought Neil Bryan was amazing in those scenes, but there was a scene with and the impact it had on the Archers and Tom and Helen and everybody. Yeah, I mean, it's great. It's great to have a baddie, isn't it? It's great to have a bad boy.
He's a bad boy, isn't he? You sort of wait to think, oh, now what's going to happen? And you think that he's going to improve, and he doesn't. He sort of, something else happens.
Yes, and the way he spoke to his mum.
I know.
That's what rings in my head. And didn't she slap him?
Yeah, and I was like, I just slapped him.
Yes.
God, that was such a
awful.
good scene. That
Called her a slag or something.
But that's what's great about Angus, I think, he just does not hold back. He's we're very blessed with some very talented actors in the Archers, younger actors, particularly that have come through. You're all brilliant, all you young, and he really plays.
With Angus, he is the sweetest soul.
Really is.
You ever meet him, the most beautiful human being, and then he goes on mic.
I've never heard him raise his voice.
Yeah, he's brilliant.
Just so lovely, and then he goes on mic, and this voice comes out.
And he can be so vile, and he does it brilliantly, actually.
Yeah.
Really, really, really well.
What fun.
Yeah. So much fun. We need a baddie. We always, Matt Crawford's gone, so we.
But then Matt was, Ambridge has had the lovable rogues, hasn't it? Like Matt Crawford and like Nelson Gabriel are much missed. But then it's had the villains like Rob.
Yeah. Rob Titchener.
And like Clive Horrobin.
Yeah.
So I suspect George is moving more in the.
Yes, because
towards the villain.
There's kind of there's lovable, there's kind of always a bit cheeky, and then there's that is nasty, and some of the things. But you wonder what I don't know. I always feel for Emma.
Yes.
It's her son.
Because she's tried to do everything so right, and it's not been easy, not been an easy life.
And to sort of be able to admit to yourself that your son is bad.
Yeah. And she's always there wanting to support him. But listen, what's going to happen to them? This tree venture. I think there's going to be some drama. Somebody's going to cut their fingers off, aren't they? Something terrible is going to happen.
I didn't even think about that until Ed started, and I was like, oh God.
I know. He got into a bit of a state.
He's going to get decapitated.
I know. Yeah.
But we were talking in an earlier presentation about the possibility of funeral directors in Ambridge, and that maybe Tracy and Chelsea could set one up. And I think with the tree business...
Need 2 boxes, one for the head.
Maybe
Yeah, that's true. I'll do the hair. The hair will look
amazing.
Put some foundation on. Yeah, fun.
Just the head.
Yeah. Terry, where are you? Storyline.
He's writing it down. Story gold there.
No, it's brilliant. And of course, Tracy, we mustn't forget, is a brilliant cricketer, isn't she? Because she's head of the cricket. And you've got Henry is interesting, isn't he?
That
was so nice.
That is a lovely little actor. He's like
lovely.
12, and he's superb. And he's a lovely boy. Yeah. Yes, I listened, because I've caught up completely, and I was listening to him and Harrison. It was lovely.
I know, it's lovely.
And it's just so, it was the whole Rob, Henry, absolutely heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Horrible man.
I know.
But let's talk about something more cheerful, which is the wedding, because I thought that was one of the highlights of my Ambridge year, really. Tracy and Jazz's wedding. And it was a very kind of Ambridge wedding, wasn't it? That everybody...
It didn't happen.
They didn't have one.
Yeah.
And everybody kind of pitched in with flowers and dresses and things.
Yeah. And
team effort.
Kept almost happening and then didn't. And then...
Well, did it? Yeah. And then they got trapped in the bathroom. It's hilarious. I was actually wearing... a rehearsal skirt. If you want a little bit of, they kind of have these. It's just bits of material with ribbon around the top that you pop on. And so I pulled it up to here. I think I looked absolutely gorgeous, and I had a bunch of flowers or something. I can't remember. But yes, it was hilarious. I loved that, and it had to go wrong, didn't it? I mean, it couldn't go smoothly.
It went right in the end.
Yeah.
And of course, Jim came to the rescue with the Riley eventually when the car broke down, and then he went off to Scotland. And,
Yes.
you know.
Off to Scotland. It set off at 6:30 p.m.
Well, as you would, as the Horrobins would.
Yeah, of course. It's like, yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
But Tracy wouldn't have married Jazza if Chelsea and Brad hadn't been in favour of it, I don't think, would she?
No, I don't think so. But because that was all tricky, wasn't it? That was who was going to propose to who.
Yeah.
And then you had to propose.
And it got so mixed up because we were trying to get whether you would or whether he would.
And then they both decided they wouldn't.
And then we did.
Yeah.
For you.
Yeah, it was sweet. Yeah. I think it
fun.
is nice because we do get to play largely the kind of funny storylines. And I think, for me, really, the pregnancy situation was the first, serious storyline that I'd had, and that was sort of 10 years in. I think it is quite a privilege to be able to get to play both sides. To have some real comedy as well as the darker stuff.
So, what hopes do you have for both your characters for the future? Ooh, silence.
First. Well, I really want Chelsea to be a hairdresser and open a salon in Ambridge somewhere. In Ambridge, not out of Ambridge.
No. Could she at the Grey Gables, do you think? Could she have a little salon at Grey Gables? Would that
because hasn't it got all sorts
Would that be a possibility, Kerry?
That's a very good idea because there's lots of wealthy, get some good tips.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That would be, just somewhere where she can meet lots of different people and know everyone's business. And give people advice. And I just make more connections with people. I feel like she's at her best when she's helping people out. And I'd like to see, I think I said before, I'd like to see her, who she gravitates to romantically.
Yeah.
Or maybe she doesn't. Maybe that's not a priority for her. I don't know. I'd like to get to know her in that way.
Yeah.
And I hope she keeps a strong relationship with her family. I think her family is core to her, and she's incredibly loyal to them. So I'd like to think that she stays around them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't really want her to get rich or because it's nice to have that side of things. But I suppose just to be healthy. I suppose just like the same hopes I have for myself, really, and her family, that her family's happy. It's great working at the Bull. I was really pleased about that. I would love for Tracy to have more time with Oliver, I think. Maybe discover a new talent or, I don't know, interest. And still play cricket. Keep playing cricket.
Yeah.
I love a bit of cricket. Not in real life. But I do play netball. So I've kind of got an idea of being competitive and in sport, ball game, a bit bigger. But
And apparently Hannah's got a good swing.
Hannah's very good, apparently.
They've discovered, haven't they? So
She's a good bowler.
Good bowler.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, bowler. Beg your pardon. Yeah.
Sonny, what do you think Lillian makes of Tracy and Chelsea?
Because you had a little, all right, Lil. All right, Lil.
Yeah.
She says Lil. It was very funny, that episode. I think I have mentioned it before, but we had an episode a little while ago now. You hadn't long been in the programme. Yeah. And there was a scene with you, me, and Linda, who plays Carol, and you were doing everybody's hair. And you just turned around to my character and you said, something like, what do you want, Lil? And nobody had ever called Lillian Lil before. And I didn't quite know, as my character, how to react. I do remember that, thinking, what does she do? Is she affronted? What does she do? Well, me, Sonny, just thinks these two are the most fantastic actresses. And I just love the way that Susie developed Tracy, just one of my favourite characters. But as Lillian, well, I think she's a bit wary of the pair of them, because actually that they will say what they want to say, and they'll give as good as she will. So I think she's probably a little bit wary of them. But I think she's got a soft spot for Chelsea, actually. I think the fact that Chelsea did say Lil, I think there's part of Lillian that thinks, I rather like her, actually. So maybe Lillian could fund her or something in a business or something like that.
Oh.
But come on. And the thing is that also Lillian's always had a little bit of a kind of that relationship with Jazza. They've always had a little bit of a twinkle in the eye. So that's always another thing. Bit of a man-eater, as we know she is. Yeah. So I mean, he's terrified of her, but she thinks he's rather handsome.
Yeah. That's nice. I love that.
But of course, for Lillian, there's been a Miranda. Miranda has appeared, hasn't she, on the scene? And that's we're looking forward to potentially more storylines with Miranda. And I think Lucy's doing brilliantly, who plays Miranda.
So great.
And, she's Simon's wife in real life, Simon Williams' wife in real life. And so we have great fun with all that. And she's the loveliest lady. That will be interesting to see how all that develops. And of course, from Lillian's point of view, there are two things going on there, aren't there? Because her sister, they've just celebrated, but it's just been, not celebrated, the anniversary of her sister's death, Jennifer's death, which is only a year. And she's got two things going on there with Miranda, because Miranda obviously was Justin's wife, and there's all that going on, but also she's now having a relationship with Brian, her sister's husband. So it's quite interesting when I have scenes with Lucy, because just working out what she's actually feeling and how that will all go, actually. And she doesn't trust Justin as far as she can throw him, I don't think, really. She's always very wary of him. And so, it will be very interesting to see how all that develops, really.
It's brilliant to hear these two fantastic women. Yeah. I'm loving all those scenes.
Yeah, it's good. It's good fun. It's good fun when the scripts drop through the letterbox. You think, oh, now what's happening? Where are we now? Where are we now with this relationship?
Sonny, would you guys like to ask some questions? Do people have questions? Right, I'm just going to nip down with a handheld mic then, and if you can talk amongst yourselves while crikey. Old age.
I might just take a picture of everybody.
That's a good idea, isn't it?
Should we do
got my phone.
Should we do?
Yeah.
If I do that, and then everybody could.
Crikey, they're all waving at me.
Wave. Everybody could wave. So you come in. You come in.
Which shall I come in?
Right. No. What
am I doing?
Here. Ready? So everybody say Horrobins. Horrobins.
Like a slug in the
I'm hopeless with technology.
Who's got a question? Over there. I think that's all.
Okay, yes. It's really for you, Tracy. Have you put the Riley on eBay yet, or what's happened to it?
I know. I mean, thanks, Jim, but how much does this cost to run? Maybe that's for the future when they next run out of money. It's a good idea. It's also had someone giving birth on the back seat. I'm not sure.
I'm a massive fan of Tracy and the Horrobin family, and particularly as you've developed over the years, you've become very well-rounded working class characters. You moved away from being caricatures, and actually you talk about very working class things like poverty, the reality of poverty, and like Chelsea's ambitions to become a hairdresser are just fantastic. So I was just wondering if you'd like to reflect on that and how it's been a criticism of the Archers from this academic Archers audience. It's been a bit too middle class over the years, and now it's got these really well-rounded working class characters in there.
Well, that's brilliant to hear that you find them well-rounded, and I think it is important to have that aspect of of life and the reality for so many people. And in that year of kind of Horrobin, because it kind of, the stories kind of, the characters come and go, don't they? It's kind of this sort of, the spotlight, someone's described it as the spotlight kind of hits on a certain characters and then it moves off, and we had our kind of, hopefully it'll come back onto us. But when Tracy, the cost of living crisis really hit her hard, and working in the chicken factory and this reality, and I did feel that it was important that we reflect on that, especially in rural communities where the work for people. I don't know about sort of from your side of things.
Yeah, just that, I don't know, they work really hard. And they put everything they have into working.
And support, and having to support, you know, her father's at home. I know there was some worry. I think when Tracy first came in, there was the house that they lived in, and there was Tracy said she was going to sign the agreement. Everyone was like, "Ooh, she's gonna." But I think, I mean, she just supports her father, and far more than Susan does. And you know, 2 children, single mother as well. And I really respect Tracy for how hard she's worked and how well she's brought her children up as a single parent. So I'm glad that they're there and that they're being real.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, it's the same with Ed and Emma, isn't it? You know, they've worked so hard.
And
all their
Clary,
life.
that's
And
sad.
Clary,
When she had that moment a few months ago
Yeah.
saying, we work so
So
hard.
hard, yeah.
Because they haven't got that magic money tree and anything solid that, so it's frustrating. But it's how it is for lots of people. So I'm glad that they're there.
Thank you for that.
She's standing up.
I feel we're lucky to have 3 women actors here. And I often think when I'm listening to really anything fictional about the Bechdel test, about 2 women talking for, I think it's more than a minute, not about a man.
Yeah.
And I feel The Archers generally does that pretty well, but I'd love to hear what you as women actors think about that.
That is, that's really interesting. And I think when I got together with Jazza, when Tracy got together with Jazza, that not specifically worried me in that kind of thinking about the test, but I didn't want her to become defined by her relationship, because I think there's a danger once you get married, you kind of, as a character, not necessarily in real life, but you sort of, you get a bit too rounded. I think the edges can be worn off, and but I think she's all the writers are avoiding that with her, and with Chelsea. Chelsea doesn't really talk about
No, well, that's
boys and things very much.
Yeah, it's an aspect of her that she does generally, but not. That's an aspect of her that hasn't cropped up yet. And even with Ben, like it was never about them. It was about her.
Yeah.
And she had some brilliant conversations with, as we mentioned before, Natasha, Pip, all women, and hearing their side of their stories and how it affected them. It was never,
But I think it's I'm really glad that kind of test exists, and I think it is important that, I don't know, women in drama can often be portrayed as these kind of, it's either sexy, it's often about sex. And actually thinking about, I'm reading a brilliant book at the moment called Salt on Your Tongue, and it's about women in the sea, and Charlotte Runcie, and it's non-fiction, but it's about how Greek myths have been sort of transformed over the years, and how women of the sea and those are portrayed often as sexual, drawing men to their doom, and it's like, no, they're just powerful in their own right. Nothing to do with.
And I think it's interesting with Lillian, because in many ways you'd say, well, she's defined by men, isn't she? Because she's always wanted relationship with men, blah, 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 and she's this very sexual being. But what I've loved, and I thank you, Kerry, and all the writing team, through the years, that they've developed her in such a way she's very much her own woman. And there's no doubt about that. And I mean, I think when Carol, who played Linda, when there was the fire at Grey Gables and she went through that awful time, Lillian became a really important friend to her. And it was a very bonding experience. So that relationship now is very strong. And also the relationship she's developing with Alice as a result of the fact that, Jennifer has died, in a way that the family is regrouping. And definitely Lillian is becoming much more of a maternal figure. And that's been quite an interesting aspect for me as an actor to explore all that with Alice. And so, that again is very much a female thing that's going on. So although she's a very sexual being, she's not just defined by that. And so I thank the writing team for all that, actually.
I'd like to ask Susie how different The Archers was when you came back as Chelsea from when you played Kate as a 12-year-old.
Well, not very, because everyone was the same. Well, I mean, it was different buildings. That's one thing. But I found it really. I was quite intimidated as a young person. I mean, it was. I didn't really have any concept of The Archers when I joined as Kate, because my family had never listened to it. I just had a lot more confidence, I think, when I came back as Tracy. But it was so lovely because there were all these people that I'd known for many, many years. It really feels like, even though I wasn't in it for 17 years, it feels like it's been part of my life that whole time. And it definitely, I mean, those 4 or 5 years playing Kate have informed the rest of my career. And I thank The Archers so much for having me at that time. It's been my life, really, and just wonderful, but so lovely to go back and see people. And it's just a wonderful family, really. And it felt like that. It felt like going back home.
And when we lose actors, it's...
As Kate? I mean, I was aghast all the time. I was such a swot in real life. And I was like, ooh. Yeah, but I remember my first line being, "I'll have a lager and lime, please," at the ball. I was like, oh my God. That's me in my school uniform, my maths homework. So it was great to play that character, play her. But of course, it's so hard to think of me being Kate now, because it's Perdita, and she's just incredible.
Yeah, she's very funny.
Thank you.
I feel a bit nervous asking this question sitting as close as I am to Kerry. But just given, Susie, what you have said about not being defined by the character, or perhaps Maddie, you perhaps using the term Lil, if those weren't in the script, or how much in the moment could you ad-lib or come back to the scriptwriter to say, I don't think my character would say this, or outside that specific episode or script, how much can you actually shape and steer where the script is going?
Ooh, good question. That's kind of developed as we've gone along, because at the start, when I didn't really know Chelsea and her way of speaking, kind of discovered it as I went along, and then as time's gone on, the writers are kind of along with us and pick up on our little bits and bobs, and so the next time we find, it's like, oh yes, I recognise that from before, and it kind of, we kind of develop together. I haven't quite got to the point yet where I go, I don't know if she'd say this, or I just don't know her well enough. So at the moment, I'm learning from what it's being written. But I know that some other actors sometimes might go, oh, I feel like it could be said this way round, and there is a dialogue in the room when we're recording regarding that, so you can do that.
Yeah, you can't ever sort of ad-lib on the spot really, but,
Yeah.
but with Tracy it's quite interesting because I'll either, it doesn't happen very often, but either something is slightly, a word she wouldn't use because it's just too, I don't know, flowery or middle class sounding. And then on the flip side of that, I'll say, well, she's not stupid. She's not going to say, for example, this is quite recent. There was I don't know if I can say this, but there was it was in the Bull, and it was with Linda, and Linda wanted some wine, and Tracy offered her the Savy Blanc, but it was written Savy Blanc, and I was like, well, she's not going to say Savy Blanc because she knows she's worked in the, she's not. She knows it's Savvy. She knows it's blonde, but she probably would say Savvy blonde. So I asked if I could change that. It's just little things, and all and the little, I don't know. Tracy would usually say all right, rather than okay. It's just little things like that, and sometimes it's to do with the accent as well. It might something sounds better or more real in our accent.
Yeah, and it is interesting because the darling that comes from Lillian, I mean, I think that came from a co-reciprocal thing with the script. Right, I'd probably use it. They thought, oh, that sounds quite interesting, and I have to say, every now and again, I will pepper more darlings in, and the producer was, I think enough, Sonny, enough. But I do remember years ago, and it is a long time ago, and it's when Kim was playing Matt Crawford, and we had a scene, and it was a new writer, and listen, these writers are just brilliant, but it'll take a while sometimes for writers to get to know your rhythms and and so on and so forth. And I had a line, we were in the house and it was like evening or something, and I said, or Lillian said to Matt, oh darling, just go and get me my slippers, will you? And I said, slippers doesn't feel right for Lily, because I'm thinking of a little sort of cosy thing. And I said, what about mules? She'd have mules. She'd have something like that. But, and so I do remember that specifically, and whoever was producing, oh, yeah. But that's, again, you do get to know the character really, I suppose, quite well in that. But everyone's lovely. The producers are always very lovely about that, because you do get to know the rhythm of your character quite well. Don't you?
I think it's a fascinating. I mean, I'd love to speak to Kerry about it. That whole, because it's a team effort, and it's everybody.
Absolutely.
It's Jeremy and the story. The producers developing the story. It's the writers. Then it's the act. I mean, it's this kind of. I suppose it's probably hard to define. Really, it's kind of an organic thing that happens, and it just. And I know that you hear a new character and you go, oh, yeah. I sometimes go, yeah, they're great, and I can see where that's gonna go, and it's this. It must be exciting. I don't know if it's exciting for you when you hear and get a new character, and then you hear the actor playing them, and you're like, we can do that.
Yes, I'm sure that happens. Yeah. Do you want to have Kerry?
Oh, you've got the mic now, have you? Oh, you have.
Yeah, you, Kerry. Yes.
There's a worrying period when you've written the character and you haven't heard them on air yet.
Yes.
And you kind of, you've launched them,
yes.
And you don't know if they're going to fly.
Yeah.
And when they do, and they usually do, actually, they might be a little tentative at first. It's a wonderful feeling. Yeah. And that's when this feedback loop starts, the positive feedback loop, where you hear the things that they do well, and you do more of that.
Yeah.
And do you get, this is interesting, Kerry, do you get, for established characters, do you get the rhythm of that character in your head when you're writing?
Absolutely, I said earlier, when I write a scene, I'm seeing the whole thing as if in a dream. It's all real, and so the people are there, and I can hear them talking. It's one of the few occupations where hearing voices and doing what they tell you doesn't get you locked up. It actually gets you paid.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think we've got time for one more.
Yes.
Hi.
Thank you for coming today. It's been really lovely. I'm just really interested in this idea of like caring responsibilities in a working class, multi-generational household, because there are other people that Kate was caring for Peggy, but that was, more of a choice, wasn't it? And less of something that's kind of had to happen. And I just wonder if Chelsea had the baby, how much Tracy would be looking after the baby and how much Chelsea would be. And I think that's really interesting, and the dynamics that there could have been with that. I wonder what you think about that.
Yeah, well, I think that it would have been a tag team situation, because I remember as part of the storyline, Tracy was sort of saying, "We'll do it. We'll get through it, and I will."
Yeah, I think
support.
Yeah, there was that. It is that. There's always been that strong thread of family for the Horrobins, hasn't there? And I actually think Tracy would have done a lot. And I think she has that understanding of being a single parent looking after children. And I think she's so capable as well. But I actually also think that Susan would have helped, because Susan and Tracy are very close, really. But it would have been, my God, there's the grandfather. And teenagers, they're not the heartache with Brad and exams and then a baby. God,
would have been a lot.
Tracy would have aged quite a lot.
And also, I imagine, I don't know, would Chelsea then be able to go and, study? Well, she's finished studying now, but doing her hairdressing, how much of that could she do? And working at the Orangery.
Financially, it would have been very tough because Wendy, I mean, we all know how expensive childcare is. I don't know how.
But she has had an incredible role model in Tracy, being an amazing mother. So I think that, it would, they would have done it. I think
Brad would have had to chip in.
Yes,
I think. He'd have been doing the night feeds.
And he'd have been very good. Very good,
He'd
I think.
He'd be so sweet.
Yeah. But I think they do all pitch. I think they do band together in crisis, don't they? And anyway, but particularly in a crisis. I think.
I'm so sorry we've run out of time, because it's just been brilliant to talk to you.
So nice
both.
to get questions.
Yeah. And we could, in another universe, we go on all afternoon, but we can't. So thank you so much for coming and for sharing your thoughts about your wonderful, wonderful characters. It's been brilliant, hasn't it, Sunny?
It has been brilliant. And thank you so much, Academic Archers, for inviting us. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to our One Stiletto in the Grave podcast. If you'd like to see behind-the-scenes clips and bonus content, please visit our Facebook page, One Stiletto in the Grave podcast. And if you'd like to ask any questions, follow us on Twitter at OneStiletto65. This podcast is produced by Raggedy House Productions and the music composed by Tom Smith. See you next time!